Good morning. I'm glad everybody's here that's here.
Full top that you have on, like the color of the pattern is a little incorrect.
So, just to remind everybody about the format, I think most faces are familiar and but I'll say it anyway. What we like to do is give our presenter, in this case, Drew Butler, time to just tell his Odyssey uninterrupted. Very important, just so he doesn't lose his flow. And when he's finished, I like to take a moment of silence to breathe, just let the words settle. And then we'll have questions. During the question time, I'll pass around a microphone. And Drew is welcome to not answer any questions that he chooses not to answer. So, without further ado, Drew.
Hi, my name is actually George Drew Butler.
Well,
I use my middle name. My mother told me when I started having children, whatever you're going to call them, make that their first name. Because my older brother is Ellis Lee, and everybody calls him Lee, and I'm George Drew. And it was a bit of a struggle through elementary school. The teachers want to know why they call us Drew instead of George or Ellis, and it was very confusing. But anyway, I signed my name G. Drew Butler. Way of getting around it. I was born in 1949, first half of the first half of the 20th century. I made it in just under the wire. I was My older brother was born. He's 13 months older than I am, and my parents didn't have any more children for 6 years. We moved frequently. Let's see, I was 7 weeks old when we moved to New Orleans. I was 2.5 years old when we moved to St. Louis, and we moved back to Memphis. And then we stayed in Memphis. We stayed in Memphis till I went to college, and it worked out for us. Though we moved internally in Memphis several times. We moved we lived at one place, and then we moved out to the county, and then we moved back into the city. And I went to junior high and started high school. Well, I finished up elementary school, started high school, and then we moved out to Germantown. It's a place right outside of Memphis. And uh, the it was a pretty good thing. I do move. We moved a lot, and it seemed like we stayed about 3 years in one place, and we moved. Uh, the My two younger brothers were born. Jeff was born 55, and he was born on my mother's birthday, and he was always her favorite. And then Tracy was born in 1961 in January, and he was the youngest. And people would look at my mother, who was 5'7", and look at us and just shake their heads. They couldn't believe we're as big as we were. Tracy eventually got to 6'6", and Jeff was 6'1", and Lee was 6 foot. We were pretty big guys. Uh, I started school at Colonial Elementary School, and I went to Willow Oak. Then I went to Ellendale. Then I went to Avon. Then I went to Richland. Then I went to White Station. Then I went to Germantown. And Richland and Germantown were the two I went to the longest. I went 6 years there. Oh, what next? I was raised in the Baptist Church, the Southern Baptist Church. It was not the same as it is now. It had a principle known as the uh, fellowship of the believer. In other words, you're required to believe two things. First, Jesus Christ died for your sins. Second, that you believe in God. And third, that you were baptized by immersion. After that, you were pretty well wide open. And we've thought about these things. It was actually in the 1970s when the church started changing, and the Southern Baptist Convention became a doctrinal church. By doctrinal, I mean that there were certain beliefs you had to have to be considered a Baptist. Uh, I grew up in the Baptist church. I started to go into the Baptist church when I went to college. Went to college in Martin, Tennessee, which was a little town 115 miles north of Memphis, and little bitty town. There were more students at the university than there were people in the town. We had 2,600 students, and there were fewer people of that than in the town. I went. I had to go. I had to pay my own way. I didn't. My parents couldn't afford it, and I started out and I went into engineering, and I was lucky. I like engineering. I enjoyed doing it. I had many marvelous experiences at it, and you could work. And I started to work at Boeing Company in New Orleans, Louisiana. Went back to Louisiana, worked down there for 2 years. It and then I was let I reached my release date. It was on your badge. You date you were supposed they just renewed it. Well, they didn't renew it, and I got let go. And I had money. I had uh, 10 days worth of vacation. I had 3 or 4 days of sick leave, and I didn't know what I was going to do with all that money. When I got back to Memphis, and then I went to work for Chicago Bridge and Iron, and that was an interesting experience. Uh, I worked there for 2 years. I was supposed to work 7 quarters. I only worked six because I got behind going to school. And when I fought back up and I graduated on time, and I was really happy. I had gotten engaged and I got married. I got married in September after I graduated in June. And my wife and I moved to Martinsville, Virginia, where I went to work for DuPont. I worked for them for a year and a half. Left there, went to, went to Louisville, Kentucky, worked for a company called Tube Turns. You've probably never heard of it. It was a foundry and forge operation. And then I left there and excuse me, I left there and went back to Knoxville and lived in Knoxville and went to work for uh, Union Carbide at Oak Ridge. I worked at the gaseous diffusion plant in Oak Ridge. It's called K25. And my wife and I were very happy there. That's where our first daughter was born, named Amy. And my wife nearly died. She had a very bad situation, a strangulated bowel, but she survived. And then we moved to Florida. Went to work for a company called Foster Wheeler Boilers, and that job played out, and I went to work for a company called Stock Equipment Company. You find to get through the idea, this guy can't hold a job. No. And stayed with them for 9 months, and then I decided I got a call from a company that I had talked to when I lost my job at Foster Wheeler, Brown and Williamson Tobacco, make cool cigarettes.
Mm.
And I went and talked to them. They offered me a job. I decided to take it, and went to work for them. And I worked 2.5 years in Louisville, Kentucky, again, and then I moved to Macon, Georgia, which is where the main plant was. and I thoroughly enjoyed that job. That was the best job. I was happy. I really, really got things done, and uh, it's just a wonderful situation. Now, I forgot to add something in here. In the meantime, being a Baptist, uh, Martin Luther King was killed in April of 1968, and I was at work. I was working, and that caused a lot of turmoil. And a lot of people, the director of the Baptist Student Union, where I had been a member, participated in a lot of things, uh, felt was very liberal, and pretty much the attitude at the church I was going to Martin was, whose side would you have been on?
Mm,
And I was very uncomfortable.
mm,
And eventually I left. And I bounced around. I went to the Methodist church. I went to the Presbyterian church. I went just all kinds of places. And I really didn't get back to going to the Baptist church until I was in Knoxville when I was working, when I was finishing up. And I kind of got back into that. My wife and I uh, attended the Baptist church. She was Lutheran, and we attended the Lutheran church. We attended a Baptist church in Louisville. We attended a Lutheran church in Knoxville. We attended a Lutheran church in Florida, and just bounced around. And it was pretty satisfactory. We got to Macon. We could not find a Lutheran church that we liked, and we decided that the Baptist church was too conservative, and we decided to go to the Presbyterian church. And that was a good experience. That was, I taught Sunday school. I taught adult Sunday school for about 10 years, and had a wonderful time. Very, uh, very great time. The second thing I did in Macon was find the theater. I love the theater, live theater. We did there is, for a small town, it's incredible. There are 5 different community theaters in that town. Uh, and I started out at one called Macon Area Community Theater, and I was formed in in a show called The Unexpected Guest, which is written by Agatha Christie, which shows you that Agatha Christie has bad days. Mm. But it was quite an experience, and I really, really enjoyed it. Then I was in Play It Again, Sam, and I built sets for a couple of other shows, and I got that theater group eventually closed down, and I went over to the other main theater in Macon, which is called Macon Little Theater, and I met a man by the name of Jim Crisp. He was the director, and he was a full-time director. He had a little apartment at the theater that allowed him to stay there, and we got to be very good friends, and we stayed friends for, well, almost 20 years. In fact, we still are friends. And our first show I was in there was Annie, and I was in the chorus, and I did various things. Then I was in MASH, which I played Trapper John McIntyre. It was a lot of fun. I was in a lot of shows. I did shows. I tried not to let the shows interfere with my family life. Uh, but slowly but surely, my wife and I grew apart. And in 1994, we got divorced. It was a sad situation. She was very, very angry with me, but that's to be expected. And my daughters, I had 3 daughters by that time. I had one that was born in Louisville, one that was born in Florida, and one that was born in Louisville. Oh, yeah, excuse me. Amy was born in Knoxville, and Sarah was born in Florida, and Jenny was born in Louisville. And they were and are the greatest thrills of my life. I don't know. As I told many people, children are a pain in the ass. Once they're there, you don't know how you live without them. And we had fun. I got divorced and I moved to a small apartment. And I kept working in the theater. I moved downtown in Macon. I decided I wanted to live downtown. And as it turned out, that was the same time I lost my job at Brown and Williamson. I got laid off. I lost another job. 15 years. But they decided they were cutting back and they didn't want me. And I went to work for a company called Nottingham, Brooks and Pennington. It was a engineering firm. Uh, did various projects. One of the guys is a friend of mine, and he said, "Hey, look, I need some help. Why don't you come to work for us?" I ended up staying a little over a year, and I got through that. I didn't have much money. I y- worked. Uh, excuse me. It takes me sometimes. I have trouble finding words. I had a stroke about 2 years ago, and I've had problems since then. Uh, he, we various projects, but then I got a call, and another friend of mine, a guy who ran a mechanical engineering company, and he said, uh, the people at YKK need somebody, and so you need to talk to them. Okay, and I got the job. I was the chief engineer at YKK. YKK, in case you're wondering, makes zippers. They check your zipper. They were at one time the largest zipper manufacturer in the world, and it's quite fascinating the things they do. And I was a chief engineer, and I'd always wondered, I really wondered if I had the position, the authority, could I have a impact? And I did. I had a wonderful group of guys that worked for me. I had 83 people reporting to me through various managers. And uh, I spent most of my time running around figuring things out. Had a wonderful 7 years. It only lasted 7 years, and I got let go. And in that time that I lived in downtown, had I I continued to go to the Presbyterian Church. I I felt like my daughters needed someone there, and my ex-wife went, but didn't talk much. She was quite angry. She was quite angry with me, and went for a long time. I remember especially a friend of ours, a lady who had been a friend of ours. She's the wife of the minister of one of the minister at the Presbyterian Church. She came to see a show I was in, One Flew of the Cuckoo's Nest, and I played Chief Prominent,
Mm.
and because I was the biggest guy in the audition. Yeah. And that was really that was a marvelous show. I went for a very long time without saying anything. Yeah, that's hard. Uh, the and she came up to me and said, "You know, I didn't know I was supposed to like this, but you were marvelous." I said, "Well, thank you." And uh, I I continued on in the theater. I did a lot of different shows. I did. Oh, what did I do? I uh, then different ones. I directed shows. I built a lot of sets, and um, it was an interesting experience. It really was. And then it happened in, oh, let me see. It was about 1990, 1991. The girls had left and gone to college. And I decided I wasn't satisfied with Presbyterian Church. The minister had been there when I left. When I first came there, had left. And he got divorced. And it made for a different kind of feeling. So I decided to look around. Well, there were several of the theater people who went to the UU. There's a UU church in Macon, Georgia, High Street Unitarian Universalist Church, and I started going there. Well, it opened up a whole new world to me. Uh, I found it fascinating that there were people who thought like they did. There were people who believed like they did. And I don't know, I started going there. I'd go, and I would walk. It was in downtown, and it's now about oh half mile, three quarters of a mile. I'd walk to the church, and I kind of enjoyed that. Had a lot of fun, and I continued to work at the theater. The last play I did at Macon, uh, there are two theaters in Macon. There's Macon Little Theater and there's Theater of Macon. Uh, yeah. Uh, and we built that theater. When I say we, the members of the theater community built that Theater of Macon, the first Theater of Macon. It was in an old uh, cafeteria, S&S cafeteria, and we built that theater. Uh, my daughter Amy and I drywalled the entire theater. Years later, when she was in college, she went over to volunteer at Habitat for Humanity. I said, "Can you do it?" "I can drywall." "Oh, really? Oh, show us." And she, I mean, I went, "What?" I said, "I drywall a lot of stuff." But we built that theater. Jim had been let go by Macon. They got into some kind of argument, and it's a mess, and it's not important anymore. It's 30 years. And he found the theater. He decided he we started out at Macon College and were performing in a space they had. But after a year, we decided we needed our own space, and we went and built the theater, built it all except the electrical. And that was a interesting. Had the stage had a column on one side of it, big column, big 2 foot square column. And when we left there, we often wondered, well, what was Jim going to do? And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, Jim would say, go to the column, put your back to the column, face the column, the column to your right." He's going to have lack of stage direction. And we moved in 1993 to the Ritz Theater. We got a grant, we raised some money, and we bought the theater. And uh, set up this beautiful theater. We didn't have to do 13 performances anymore. We could get by with 7 or 8. And we launched out into that. The last show I did at Theater Macon was the Indians. I played Wild Bill Hickok, and Jim Chris said, "You cannot take this part too far." I guess I never did. He never said anything about correcting me. Uh, It was a lot of fun, and we enjoy that. It's very serious. The idea behind Indians is the violent collision of the white and Indian cultures as seen through the eyes of Buffalo Bill Cody. Buffalo Bill Cody was a friend of Wild Bill Hickok. Why he was called Wild Bill? His name was James Butler. No, I could never find out. Uh, and it was interesting. Well, got let go by YKK, needed to find another job. I was always trying to find jobs. That was in 1994, and I I was 55. Uh, we didn't know what I was going to do. Well, I managed to find a job. It was a company called Burns and McDonnell, and there were four people in this office, and a guy, and I got a job there. And I went to work And I was in that office a total of 2 months. Most of the rest of the time was spent wandering around and at Dobbins Air Force Base. I worked at Dobbins Air Force Base, worked on a construction job, and did several jobs out there. I also traveled to Pennsylvania and worked in Philadelphia, worked at the airport in Philadelphia, and that's significant. And then I worked in Fresno, California, and I worked in Lake Havasu, Arizona. Lake Havasu is as far west as you can go in Arizona and still be in Arizona. The next stop is California. And those were all interesting experiences. I got to do a lot of different kind of things. And I came back and I was diddling around doing, scared I was going to get laid off. And there I was 57. Uh, didn't have too young to retire. And then all of a sudden I got a call from a guy named David Yeaman. And David Yeaman was the president of our division. And he said, what do you think of going overseas? I said, where? Hutter. Huh? And he said, look, the, uh, the guy in charge of this job is the fellow you know, and he worked with him in Philadelphia, Bernardo. Oh yeah. Well, he wants you to come. Well, I don't know. Look, just do us a real favor, help us out an awful lot in getting this job if you'd come. And I took a deep breath. I was single. I didn't have any attachments, and I took a deep breath and did something that I had done. I'd done it several times, starting with Brown and Williamson. Well, I've never done that, but I'll give it a shot. I at 57, I flew across the ocean first time in my life and landed in Doha, Qatar. It was 110 degrees. It was hot. And we get up in the morning, we get a call and tell us not to go in until they hear from them. We didn't know we were going to turn around and go home or going to go to work. Well, it turns out we went to work, and uh, it was an interesting experience. Uh, Qatar's a Muslim country. It is the same uh, a Muslim sect as the Saudis. In fact, the Qataris and the Saudis are cousins. They're both different groups, Bedouin groups. Uh, Qatar is a separate emirate. It was supposed to have been part of the United Arab Emirates, but the last second they decided to go off on their own, and they went off on their own. They became a separate emirate. In 1868, a Saudi army tried to invade Qatar, and a Qatari army defeated them. Now, and the head of that army was a guy named El Thani. Well, he became the emir, and you had marvelous place. It was a marvelous place. It was really easy to live there. You had to remember to. Uh, it was suggested that you wear long pants when you go out, and I did. I generally wore long pants when I went out amongst and in the general area. When I went to friends' house, sometimes I wore shorts and everything. It was God, it was hot. But we got used to it, and there was three other guys that came with me. A guy named Ward. What's Ward's last name? Can't think of it. Anyway, and Curtis Wilson, and we set up and we got to working. Nobody told us anything. We had to find our own housing. We needed a driver's license. We didn't find about that till next year. And a lot of things. And we made a pact that we would not let that happen to another person. And everybody that came in after that, we gave them advice about how to get started. Uh, the I worked in there. I worked reviewed drawings and I did various things. And like I said, it was a marvelous experience. I learned that Qataris were just people. They generally they didn't have a lot to do with us. They considered themselves superior. They thought they had the finest religion in the world. But their attitude was, "You got your religion, we've got our religion. Let's don't interfere with business." And that was very definite. There were covered women. That was a principle was decided by the families. Everybody else, a woman could drive. One of the most interesting things was there was a street called Sebring Road, and speed limit on part of it was 60 miles an hour. It was in town, and it was a two-lane street with cars parked on both sides, and nobody was paying any attention. we we'd be driving up that street and have to watch out for somebody running into it. Oh, one thing was important: if you had an accident uh, and there was a Qatari involved in it, it was your fault. It didn't matter what you did; it didn't matter what happened. It was your fault. Uh, the and if it was a woman, it was really your fault. Covered women drove. There's nothing more terrifying than being going driving down the street and seeing this covered woman pulling out from the side, but she couldn't see anything. Oh, we had a marvelous time there. Well, we did. We did. There was a very large expat community. One of the favorite jokes going around Qatar at the time was a fellow who said, so it was the poorest Qatari. Okay, how are you? Oh, I'm poor. Said, do you have a car? Oh, yes, I have a car. You have a Land Cruiser. It's the most popular car in Qatar. So no, I'm too poor to have a Land Cruiser. I have a Lada. So, oh, do you have a driver? Oh, yes, I have a driver. Oh, you like your driver? No, 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 not like my driver. What's wrong? He is Canadian. He is far too polite. We can get nowhere. The most Qataris had Indian drivers.
Sorry.
People didn't believe me when I told them that people will get up on the sidewalk and drive. They do. They did. And you did. It was, and you're up to you to get out of there. What? Uh, if you acquired parking tickets or driving tickets, you had to get those clear. They wouldn't let you leave the country. And we found that out too. Uh, we found it out because at Christmas, a friend of ours, Nancy Allen, was supposed to go home for Christmas, and somebody said, "Have you checked your tickets?" She's like, "What? Check it. They don't have police. They don't pull you over. They have cameras." And so she checked. She had $9,000, 9,000 real worth of tickets. And there was a section of highway which she was ran from her residence. Almost all jobs in Qatar have residence provided with them. And but now you can live wherever you want, but you had to pay the rent. And she had been it dropped from 45 to 30, and she'd been driving. She never saw the sign half the time, and she had racked up a bunch of tickets. Well, the guy, she, well, I want to go home. I'm leaving 2 weeks on it. Another guy took her out there and paid the tickets, and she was allowed to go home. Uh, it was a very interesting experience. So 2.5 years I left and came back to the United States. and I went to work out at Whiteman Air Force Base. And I stayed out there for a year and a half, and that's where I met my wife, Linda. And we dated for that, and then got down to it. And we were looking at a job in Maine at a place up there, and we were living together. We weren't married, and suddenly that job fell through. Well, the only job available was back in Qatar, return. And but the problem was she could not go without unmarried. So we decided to get married. We went, came back to us. Yeah. We had been attending a Unitarian Universalist fellowship group in Warrensburg, and we sometimes came up here and came to All Souls, and she really liked minister at All Souls. The uh, we went back to Qatar, and she had to make some adjustments. She had me, who knew kind of how to get things done. We had uh, we had a visa, and I didn't do anything with my visa. She kept it. Her friends tried to tell her that she needed to leave. You had to leave the country every 30 days and you got renewed you could get a tourist visa renewed every 30 days. And lots of people did it. And oh no, you don't have to whoops. You don't have to worry about that. And we got down and we found out that she did have to leave after 30 days and we were in trouble. Well, it's a huge fine. It's like, oh, 25,000 real. Real is about a quarter. And the we worked it out. We went down there and paid it. We got everything all paid for. We got ready to go back to the airport. Well, we got to fly business class. We were allowed to fly business class because it took more than 5 hours to get back to home. And so we went to the special part of the airport, and we got, oh, we weren't going to let her go. What? Well, she doesn't have permission by the civil aviation. Well, she's not here on civil aviation. Yeah, no, it was a woman, and she was covered. And I had a guy I'd help get Linda's residency permit vote approved. And I called him. He came running out. He went and got a guy that worked and this guy came down. And he started talking to this woman. The guy got a little louder. The guy got a little louder. Silent, but they were shouting. He was shouting. It's all in Arabic. I have no idea what he was saying. It's funny. Slammed on the door. She gritted her teeth and hit the thing, and he's sitting and at the bed. Well, there was another couple going home, and she was going home because her father had died. She had the same problem. The company this guy worked for had not given her permission. She grabbed the thing, slammed it down there, pointed, and she stamped it, and he's, go, go, go. And that was how we got through. Oh, one of the most interesting things we did, there's one liquor store in Qatar. One. Now, Qatar is about the size of Connecticut. It's not a very big place. You have to have someone who's been there and take you there the first time. It is impossible to find, and they can't tell you how to find it. I guess they could, but it's very difficult. Anyway, we were going to. I got my. You have to be a member to buy there, and I got now. Say you get your permit. Yeah, I got my permit. Linda wanted to go out to the liquor store and get join it, and I said, well, it's no big deal. We can do it tomorrow. No, we're going to do it tonight. So we drove out there. We go upstairs. There's a guy filling things out. It's costs you have to put 1,000 real deposit down. And I bought liquor for a lot of people who didn't have uh, uh, memberships. Uh, Thousand reality can be a lot of money at times. Uh, anyway, we get upstairs and we go to the sit down. The guy's filling the thing out, and he says, "Christian, not exactly." She kicked me under the table and said, "You are not going to explain Unitarian Universalist to this guy." Christian. He kind of looked at us and stand. Well, that's how we got joined. We had a nice time there. We had uh, oh, Linda did go home. She went home one time. She couldn't believe we were paying uh, uh, business class. Brown and Williamson paid for business class tickets. And she said, "Oh, I said, you got to understand, they don't give us the money. They keep the money." But one time she flew home business class, our tourist class, flew over, flew back. And when she got off the plane, if you think I'm going to fly back there one more time, you are out of your goddamn mind. It's okay. And then on was business class. Even we had to pay for it. We flew that. Oh, we stayed there 2.5 years. Uh, I had to come home and have my knee operated on, and I could have gone back. I could have gone back and stayed. And I was 63, and most people have to retire when they're 60. But I didn't work for a Qatari company. I worked for Burns McDonnell, and they would allow me to go back. And I could have gone back, but I didn't. I didn't. I took a job in New Jersey, and that was a really fascinating experience because there are all kinds of Unitarian Universalist churches in Jersey. Yeah, we visited 3 or 4 of them, and that was a tough job. I was and I was slugging through snow, rain, mud, stuff. And I was almost 65, and I was really, really tired, and I decided to retire. And so I announced I was retiring. The fun thing was that I went ahead and retired. We came to Kansas City because Linda owned some rental property in Warrensburg. And the idea was we were going to sell the rental property and then figure out where we're going to move to. And we looked at Asheville, we looked at Henderson, North Carolina, we looked at Chattanooga, Tennessee. We looked at Atlanta. She took a look at Macon. She didn't. So we just stayed, and we have moved to Armor Oaks, the retirement community, and we're quite happy there. And it's been a strange and wonderful journey. That's it.
Thank you, Drew. Okay, let's take a minute just to take a few deep breaths. So, at this time, we will take questions. And if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand and I'll bring you the microphone so that the YouTube recording will have both the question and the answer.
Hi, Drew.
Hey,
The most surprising thing you have said today is that you taught Sunday school for 10 years.
yeah.
Will you tell us more about what age level or levels and how did you make it through?
There's adult Sunday school, and make it through. We were quite interested in all the stuff we studied. We studied the Bible. We studied uh, other religions. We studied all kinds of things. And as far as make it through, everybody in there was a good friend of mine, and I had a wonderful time doing it. I called to serve on a jury in Macon, and the judge gives this is Mr. Hodge, this is Mr. What is his name? And does anybody in the jury pool know them? Well, I held up my hand because I knew both of them. And said, okay, he said, well, which one, it's just out of curiosity, which one would you think you'd favor? I said, well, I'd probably Mr. Gunn, because he was in my Sunday school class. Mr. Hodge was just my neighbor. So, and he said, I'm not going to force one of them to waste their strikes with you. I'm just going to let you go. And I got up and started to walk out. He said, he knows me too. Any questions?
I will ask a question since I don't see any hands right now. The number of jobs you had was astonishing. Would you care to share any insights about why you changed jobs so often?
Oh, at first I worked at DuPont. I just got tired of it. And I decided to go somewhere else, try something different. I went tube turns, and that was exciting, but it was a strain. My ex-wife was pregnant with my oldest daughter when we moved to Knoxville, and her parents lived near Knoxville, and we went down there. Oh. And uh, I stayed for 3 years, and I got itched. I needed a certain amount of excitement around me all the time. And I went to Foster Wheeler. I don't think I'd ever left Foster Wheeler. It had not closed down. And I went out to Stock Equipment Company. That just didn't, yeah, painful. And I went to work at Brown and Williamson. Well, they had what they call golden handcuffs. We were making so much money that this is really hard. You had to make you leave. Uh, and I fortunately had enough time that I was able to retire when I was 50, and start collecting a pension. It's not a whole lot, but it's a little bit. And I was let go from Brown and Williamson, went to work at YKK because I was trying to stay in Macon. I went to work at Nottingham Brook and Pennington, got the job at YKK. I was let go. And the kids were all out of school, and they sent my youngest daughter, and she was going to UGA. And I, oh, sorry. She was at UGA, which University of Georgia at Athens, which is about the same distance from Atlanta as uh, from Macon. And I got the chance to take the job with Burns McDonnell, and I took it. And I went up to Atlanta. I lived in Atlanta for 5 years.
I listened to your experiences as an engineer and your experiences as an actor. And those have always, I thought, been two different kinds of people. And I'm impressed that you're such an open man that you entertained and went enthusiastically at both. Do you look back and think that your experience in the theater has uh, affected or assisted your everyday life in any way?
Yes, uh, I learned to accept people. I learned to uh, uh, handle situations. Uh, I learned to be open. Uh, I was an engineer. There was one respect that engineers and actors are in common. They're fierce drinkers. Uh, I was a fierce drinker when I was younger. I honestly don't know how much I have to drink to get drunk. because the couple of times I really drank, I don't remember what happened. Uh, but the it was just a marvelous experience. One day I was working at the theater. I was building a set, and I'd been gone for about a week. I'd gone to a conference about air conditioning equipment. And Jim Chris said, "Well, how was it?" Oh, it was marvelous. And marvelous. And I started, and I suddenly looked at him, and he had the most horrified look on his face. I said, "Well, it was interesting to me." He said, "I'm so glad they took off."
Hi, Drew. I'm just curious, as a member, as a person on the membership team here, what attracted you, or how did you hear about Unitarianism, and what did you like about it? I mean, was it the lack of kind of dogma, or whatever led you to become a member there? So,
Well, I heard about it from my friends. There were several of the theater group that went to the High Street Unitarian Universalist. And I just thought I didn't know anything about Unitarian Universalism, and I thought it was kind of interesting. And I was fascinated with a group that held together. It had so many different disparate beliefs. Some people believed in God, some people didn't. Some people thought you go every Sunday. Some people didn't. It was really a eye-opening experience for me. And I came because I found it relaxing. Churches most Unitarian churches very open. Now, the one at the church, I did not join the Unitarian Church until I moved to Atlanta, and I attended Northwest Unitarian Universalist Church, and they had a controversy there. The minister taught a Bible study, and some people got furious. They were really angry. There was a Bible study written by John Barons, who used to be president of the UU, and the attitude of a couple of the people were they didn't want to ever hear the name Jesus in the church. And there was another family at the church that was conservative. They believed in God, but they found that. And there was I found out then that there were liberal people who were as intolerant as the conservative people.
Are there any other questions? Okay, well, if not, let's thank Drew once again. And I would love to invite everybody to come next Sunday. We're going to have a very long-time member of the church, Lon Swearingen, as our presenter.
Wow.
Thanks.
Oh.
See.